4th ERC Video Journal, this time on the Irish No campaign. During this journal, we shall introduce some of the main actors from the no side of the Lisbon Treaty referendum debate. As former Green MEP Patricia Mckenna explained, one concern which all of them share.
Despite years and years of campaigning for a more democratic, open and transparent Europe, this treaty does nothing to actually rectify those problems. In fact, it makes the European Union less accountable, less democratic and more difficult for ordinary people to be able to have a say in the future direction of Europe.
Frank Keoghan, Secretary of the People's Movement, hopes for a better, more democratic deal if the treaty were rejected by the Irish people.
The People's Movement maintains that it decreases democracy in the European Union and that this will have a detrimental effect in many areas of our lives. We would hope that you will reject this treaty, that it will be taken back and that we will get a more democratic treaty if they should decide to put another treaty to us.
Left-wing academic Anthony Coughlan, a senior lecturer emeritus for Trinity College Dublin, is the intellectual backbone of the No campaign.
Over two-thirds of our laws now come from the European community, and this new union would have all those powers, and we get a lot of more powers as well. Of course, there's some 30 or so lawmaking areas, new lawmaking areas that are passed to Brussels under the Treaty of Lisbon. Of course, then it's got the self-amending character of being a self-amending treaty to a significant extent, in that the Prime Ministers and Presidents, by agreement among themselves, can shift large areas of policy making from unanimity to majority voting, and they'll have every incentive to do that down the road.
It is obvious that head of states and government are determined to push through their agenda. Ireland is the only country to hold a referendum on the treaty. This is only because it is constitutionally obliged to do so.
But I think it's regrettable that we're the only country in Europe that are going to be allowing our people to vote. And other political leaders throughout Europe are openly admitting we're not going to let people vote on this because we don't trust them to give us the answer we want.
Roger Cole is currently the chairperson and founder of PANA, the Peace and Neutrality Alliance. For him, you cannot build any kind of Europe without the people.
As if you're creating a Europe that doesn't have support, doesn't have a mandate from the people of Europe, and if you proceed to pass basic laws like this treaty, which fundamentally changes the nature of the way rules and organisations of the European Union is made, then to do so without a referendum is to have a constitution which itself will be fundamentally flawed.
Despite the fact that most European citizens have no say in this matter, EU laws affect their lives to a growing extent, and many of them are aware of it.
A lot of people who will vote against this treaty will vote against it because they are concerned about the direction Europe is going in. And a lot of people are starting to wonder, about the implications of EU decisions on their everyday lives. And it's to try and get home to people the message that, look, the EU is not something way out there in Brussels, far, far away from you, that doesn't affect you. That every decision taken out there impacts on people's ordinary everyday lives. That this is about our future and the future of our children.
Independent MEP Sinnott, who is campaigning for a no on the Lisbon Treaty, goes even further and sees the country's sovereignty vanishing.
With the Lisbon Treaty, there is no area of life that I can think of that will not either be a European competence or be able to become a European competence either by a court ruling, by horizontal shift of powers, by passerelles, or by what's called shared competence, or new competences to Europe. So in other words, the country, in terms of competence, will be left with the crumbs.
It has been argued that the yes side and the government are afraid of a real debate on the details of the treaty and therefore try to demonize and discredit the no side.
Of course, the government, I think, and the yes side people on the whole want to avoid getting into the detailed content of the Treaty of Lisbon and want to try and turn the thing into a debate about being for or against Europe, being for or against the European Union, being in or out of the EU. As far as I know, I think it's right to say there's not a single group on the no side in Ireland that I'm aware of, whether they are on the right or the left or the centre, who are calling for a withdrawal from the European Union, but they don't want the European Union to be turned into a quasi-state, given vast more power, put under the hegemony of the big states, which the new voting system would undoubtedly do, and lose what's left, or substantially what's left, of their national democracy and independence.
There have been many complaints about the biased nature of official websites which are only meant to explain the Lisbon Treaty to the citizens. The No side is therefore dedicated to close the gap between the official propaganda on the treaty and the proper arguments against it.
What I'm doing in Ireland is having information campaigns. They're not yes meetings, they're not no meetings. They're information. And I know that when people have the correct information, they're going to vote no. And if they vote yes, at least I have the consolation of knowing that they won't come back and say they didn't know what they were voting for.
As it is obviously quite difficult to get unbiased information, Frank Keoghan advises people to make up their own mind on the Lisbon Treaty by reading it by oneself.
You will get a lot of people advocating yes and no. The most important thing, however, is the content of the treaty. So when somebody says something, if you're at a meeting, for example, you ask them for the reference, and you try to get your hands on the treaty, the actual treaty itself, and read back and make up your own mind whether you've heard the truth, or whether it's been a spin, or whether it's been put to you in a way that is not quite honest.
And finally, what if Ireland were to vote no? Would that bring the last judgment over the Irish people?
When the French voted no, to my certain knowledge, they didn't suffer from a plague of locusts. When the Dutch voted no, their dikes didn't fail and their lands wasn't flooded. And when the Irish vote no, the eldest child of every family will not be taken out and shot. You know? And the reality is that they just have to sit back and renegotiate a different treaty.
I hope you enjoyed this edition of the ERC Video Journal. Shortly we will publish an extended version of the interviews. We will be happy to make an edition on the yes side as well, and we are ready for some more interviews. Please come back to our website for more information and some more editions on the Irish topic. Bye bye.